Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. What time we are coming to you at 2 o'clock, and we hope you will stay tuned for the next hour for the program called What's Going On allpointstv.com. I have to look up here and see where we are because we're changing so many things here at the studio, and I have to make sure the name of our company is not changed. We're moving so fast. We're moving at the speed of light. I feel like I'm Superman around here. I walk in and got my coffee already ready. It wasn't, as I was saying to the engineers here, it wasn't fixed by Bill Cosby, so I know it's not laced with anything. Okay, well, that's so much about that. I came to the studio today to kind of talk about a couple of things, one of which is the end of my three-part series that I did on Facebook. And I tried to interface what I do here at the studio with what I'm doing on Facebook so we can kind of have a conversation both in written form and in the podcast programming we do here at allpointstv.com. Hope you will stay tuned and be involved in what we're trying to do here on these two networks, because we're trying to get some information out that you wouldn't get anywhere else, and we think we're doing something quite different than what is being done on such places as YouTube and other independent networks that are not at this point licensed in terms of what the information is they spew out and carry forward. Is not all licensed by the government at this point, and we have to take these freebies and use them so we can have a conversation that is really denied to us otherwise, and that's what we're doing here at this site. We are here every Monday without exception, unless I'm out of the country, but we're here, and even then we try to tape ahead of time so that we are still able to carry the program forward when I do leave and I'm gone for a period of time. But as long as I'm in the country, rain, shine, sleet, or snow, you're going to find us right here at this network. And the good thing about it is that you don't have to be here at 2 o'clock. We are available 24 hours a day in terms of picking us up at your own leisure. And although we are taping from 2 o'clock to 3 every Monday, the program is available at any time that your schedule allows you to tune in what we are doing here at this particular studio. There are so many things to talk about. I do want to start out talking about the narrative that I completed. I completed it yesterday, and it would have been Friday, Saturday, and should have finished it Sunday. But by the time I had gotten it up and ready to post it, had finished and gotten ready to post, it was too late to post it given the length of the discourse. So what I decided to do was wait until this morning to post it, and I had to cut it down some as well because it was 10 pages long. And I just think that 10 pages is too long right on Facebook. You know, already I have the longest post on Facebook, and that's anywhere in the country. I don't think anyone is posting longer narratives, and there are a lot of reasons why that goes on. It's not just my wind, you know, how long-winded I am. I think it's also because those that have some information to impart do not want to be on these networks where they're giving out information and there's no return. And that's true even of the syndicated columnists who are on these sites. One of my favorite ones is Town Hall. And these are paid sites. They get so much compensation for what they write, and they try to limit themselves to 750 words, somewhere around that length. I would never write on that site because I'm just getting warmed up. I mean, what is that, about a page and a half? And I really haven't gotten started at that point. That's my introduction, and so many other things I have to add to it. And I believe in what Mrs. Reed taught in her 12th grade English class, and that is to have a introduction, then a middle, and an ending. And the way I was trained is to, in the introduction, tell people what you're going to tell them, and then in the body of the piece, you then tell them, and then in the conclusion you tell them what you told them. And so that takes a while to get, you know, the narrative out and to express it in those three different components. And so 750 words would be, I don't know if I could do, I don't know if I've done one article on Facebook, quite frankly, in 750 words. The article, which was the coming of the first civil war in this country, which was a three-part series. The last part, which I said was going to be the climactic part of the three-part series, was 10 pages long, and I really had to end it at that point, but I didn't really realize until I got it to the end of it that it was that long. And when I went back through it and was counting the number of pages and going from page 1 to the last page and saw I was at 10 pages, I closed it off at that point, and then by the time I got it finished, it was too late. Having come from, I mean, yesterday was Sunday, so having come from a couple of sites where I was on programs, and when I was counting the pages, I said, I can't put that up there on Facebook. That's punishment. So I decided to post it this morning, and I cut it down from 10 pages to 6 pages. What I was saying, though, and it's gotten some comments, some of it private. A lot of persons like to get in the chat, and they want to have a conversation in a more private forum. And one of the persons that read all of my articles and repost them, as a matter of fact, had posted it. And when I said that the coming Civil War, the first Civil War, this country would have fought, because we've never had a Civil War in this country before, one of his readers, you know, according to what he told me on the private site, was challenging that premise. And he wanted to know from me, could I give him some information to go back to his friend who had read that attachment and give him some information to nail down the board of what I had stated. Not that he was challenging it, but the person that was on his site that had read what I had stated challenged it, because, you know, we had a civil war, quote unquote, in 1861, and it lasted 4 years. What I am contending is that that is not a civil war. What you had there was the second Revolutionary War in this country. A civil war is something different. Now, if in fact the Revolutionary War is and you're going to call it that, call it Revolutionary War, as you succeeded from the British Empire, then you cannot claim then in 1861, when the South is trying to excuse me, succeed from the Union, you cannot claim then that one is a Revolutionary War and the other one is a Civil War, when neither one of them is fighting for the power within the same territorial space. Both of them are trying to succeed from within the frame of that space. And this separation that occurred at the end of the Revolutionary War, which went on from 1776 to 1783, was successful, and therefore we can see it was revolutionary, because the end result was one that caused an upheaval in that which existed before that. And the upheaval in terms of the 13 colonies coming out of the British Empire and setting up their own nation can be seen. But what was the purpose of the war in 1861? It was the same. It was the same energy trying to bring about a similar result. And what has not been written about, and you have to go and do a lot of digging in order to read about this, and that is to read about what the South said it was trying to accomplish. And what do you think when they set up their own government, and they set up their own, when I say their own government, I'm talking about the legislative branch, judicial branch, and they did have their own president. So what do you call it when you have all the mechanisms that are going to exist outside of the structure of that which they were in fact in opposition to? It was not a civil war. Civil war is when you're fighting over the same land space and the people are competing for which group is going to be in power. In fact, you could you'll be closer to the truth in a sense if you said that there is a civil war going on in terms of what we see taking place right now, where there is a we're fighting for control of our government because it's clear to me that there is a war going on now to a much more reduced extent, but it is heating up, and that is kind of what I would take from what Judge Napolitano writes about when he says it is dangerous to be right when your government is wrong. And what I take from that is that we're in a fight in this country. Let's just be honest and be upfront about it. We're in a fight in this country to restore the integrity of the Constitution. And as I was coming to the studio, you know, I'm always thinking about how that which is accepted as reality needs to be looked at in a different way. I think my calling, quite frankly, and we all have a calling, we just have to find out what that is. I think my calling is to look at that which is established as to go and rate it and rethink it to see what else can be learned from it. In other words, I think that as lifelong learners, as they call it. And if you're a lifelong learner, you take learnings and try to see what else can be exported from the importation of the information you already have. So what can be gleaned from that which you already know? And as I was coming to the studio, I was thinking about the fact that what we have these two parties. We talk about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and we think of them as being parties that are rigid. They're saying the Democratic Party is always this Democratic Party, and it stands for these things here, and then the Republican Party has always been the Republican Party, set up in 1854, and it stands for these things over here. And I think what we fail to look at, and which nobody else has said, but I'm going to say it for the first time on the air, and that is, I think we think of these parties as being set in stone to be something rigid, so that it's the same thing 10 years ago as is right now. I don't think that is true, and has ever been true of either of the parties. I think there are different things at different times in history. And I'd like for Jonathan Turley from American University, who's a law professor there, to listen carefully, because this is because I consider him to be a real nut. He's talking about. I mean, it was really hilarious. I mean, it wasn't ha hilarious. It was hilarious that a man of his scholarly acumen that would claim to be a scholar would make the ridiculous comment he made when he talked about immigration and the president running amok as usual, and saying that it is very important that we in fact respect the separation of powers. The president overstepped his boundaries in terms of immigration, because in Article 1, Section 8 is given to the Congress to do that work. And he said we are at a constitutional tipping point. The man has to be kidding. The Constitution has been overthrown in this country, and we are in a post-constitutional America. So the question then in 2014 is, what are the two parties now? Because Democratic Party and Republican Party, neither of those names work in this environment. Now, I know nobody said this before, so just stay with me here for a minute. If you have a Democratic Party, then that means that the majoritarian view prevails. So let me ask you, how many of you out there wanted to have the Democratic Party, don't forget that's a majoritarian party, how many of you out there wanted to have the Democratic Party, and they were unanimous in it, to pass with unanimity Obamacare? You never had a majority of the American people that wanted Obamacare, and they don't want it now. So then, has any Democrat except Schumer, and you can believe that he's now talking like a duck, because in the next series of elections coming up in 2016, his position is exposed, was exposed November the 4th of this year, but will be exposed in 2016, because every 2 years we expose 1/3 of the senators up for re-election, and so therefore now he's talking about the mistake that they made. Well, isn't it a mistake anytime you have the majority of the American people saying they don't want something, and it's imposed upon them, anyway, regardless as to how they feel about it? Well, Obamacare is just one example of where the voice of the people, the majority voice of the people, was in fact dismissed. So we can get away from this idea that that the Democratic Party is made up of Democrats. We can just get away from that. I'm going to tell you what we have here today, but let me just make that point about that. Okay, now in Article 4 of the Constitution, you have in Article 4, Section 4, I think it is. It could be Article 4, Section 2, but I think it's Article 4, Section 4. But check out which of the sections we're talking about. But Article 4 is definitely where it will be located, where it says that every state will be guaranteed a Republican form of government. And what does that mean? It means that every state will have a form of government where you have representative leaders. They will represent, in other words, the leaders in a Republican government will elect their representatives in government. And those leaders are to represent the voice of the people that elected them. In other words, you don't elect people to get in power and act like Kim Jong-un of North Korea. They are your voice in government. And if that be the case, then of course, the people, we the people, have you heard that before? Of these United States. It says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. And they were looking at it both in the present and in the post-present, or the future tense. Do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. They're doing that for themselves, they said, and for their posterity, their children, their grandchildren, all the way down to the children and grandchildren today, and those that will be coming thereafter this period of time as well. It's in perpetuity. So you can't just be about the business of being a constitutional republic or a democratic, republic, and then not be there at some point in time. But these parties are not rigidly those representative of those ideas, because they represent different things about parties at different times. So what we have right now then, this is 2014. What we have right now, and Turley, are you paying attention? Because this is what you stated was an outrage. I'll get back to Turley in just a minute, because I want to tell you what's going on with Turley and this other fathead named Jonathan Gruber. Because I've been going, see, we miss a lot of things because we're too busy, and we got a lot of things in our minds, and we're trying to take care of the household, and to make it increasingly difficult to do that. And that's part of the diversion as well, because if they can keep you occupied with your existence, then you can't watch what they're doing in Washington. But I'm watching it for you. Those things that you miss, I won't miss. What you have here now in 2014 is that you have two parties. I'm going to disagree to an extent with Napolitano, although I did post his tape on Facebook where he was having a conversation with Jesse Ventura, and they're having a very good conversation on Ventura's show. I think he does something on it seems like he posted now on YouTube. I don't see him on TV anymore, but I caught this on YouTube.
You know what's interesting? I just noticed is Ventura was made fun of because he was a PPW. Not PPW. He was a pro wrestler, and that's how he made it an actor. Yet the Democrats got Al Franken elected to office in Minnesota, and this man's a friggin' moron. I mean, I'm serious. He's basically what was he, Stuart Smiley or something like that, or one of those idiot skits on Saturday Night Live. And they make hay of like Ronald Reagan being an actor, but they never do. I just talking about Ventura because they vilified him for he was a Navy SEAL. Yeah, he's a lot tougher than any of those other yahoos in Washington ever would be.
He's and he's first and foremost a patriot, and that's why he's fearful. That's why he caused so much fear in the political establishment. John, are you aware that when he was elected as the governor of Minnesota, that he was visited by the Men in Black? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that one time during the show. Yeah, conspiracy.
Yeah, they came. They came to him without identifying who they were. That which was behind the scene came to see who he was, knew he was an outsider. He had not run through the political structure, and therefore, as an outsider, he posed a threat to those who are inside the tent. What is this guy doing in here? And they went to find out who he was, and he asked them for some ID, and they wouldn't give it to him. I think he said there were about 15 of them, and they came out of the woodwork to find out what was this about. How did he actually accomplish that? Because he came from nowhere, and people were looking for some answers and for outsiders, and we know that the inside parties, the Republican Democratic Party, is not getting it done. So we're looking for some other answers that go outside the structure that they have erected, and that was worrisome. He's now outside of the tent totally. He doesn't have an elective office, but he's maintained his independent voice, and he's doing his service out there. Well, yesterday I posted one of the discussions between him and Napolitano, and Napolitano said, and I noticed Ventura shaking his head when he said it, was that we only have one party in this country, and that is a big government party, and both parties, cater to that on different sides of the political aisle, but both of them are big government parties. I don't think that's specific enough. I think today the parties are different things that said at different times in history. The name is the same, but they represent different things at different times based upon the contemporary events that are taking place. The Democratic Party is, now this is going to upset some people, I know, but I have to say it because I think that given what we just saw this past week, I think it can be proven just by what Dianne Feinstein did. The Democratic Party is really the treason party. I'll let that marinate for a minute. And the Republican Party is the anti-Constitution party. They're both outside of what was in fact willed to us, we the people, that's willed to us by the framers. You see, what the framers were doing in 1787 was trying to will to the American people a government that would stand the test and the stress put upon the American people, both in their time period and in the past, both in the past and in the future, trying to make sure that the stress that politics brings to government, I mean, human beings are running government, and there's stress involved in it because there aren't any human beings yet. Government's not run by angels, and so we don't have any human beings that are coming into power without having vested interests. That human being has not been created. And we can forget about paradise found. Paradise will always be lost. And you're not going to have a utopia, because utopia would mean then that we have now arrived at the level of human conduct that is elevated up to the level of angels. And we're not going to get there in this dispensation of life, because it is not for this dispensation of life. So that's not going to happen. So we have what has been willed to us was a contract made between those who are the leaders, the political leaders, and the people, with the intermediary being the restraints placed upon the political leaders through the document called the Constitution of the United States. And what could not be, of course, you understand it's there to restrain political leaders, but what, of course, no one can put any prohibition against is if you, in fact, overthrow the document. At that point, then, of course, any restraints put in place cannot be, in fact, carried forward because the document no longer is respected, and it has, in fact, been dismissed and dismembered. So when Turley says, as he does, that we are at a constitutional tipping point, this is laughable. And Napolitano wrote a book about that's closer to the truth, and that is the book he wrote called The Constitution in Exile. And that is as true as his other book called It is Dangerous to Be Right When Your Government is Wrong. But we are in a post-constitutional America right now. And the elected leaders in Washington have overthrown this document. In fact, Alcee Hastings of Florida came out. I don't know if he went back behind the mask after having said that. Sometimes they'll speak from behind the masking that goes on, and when they do that, they'll catch themselves and they'll go back behind the mask. But Alcee Hastings, in one of the Kodak moments, said that the law is what we say it is. Alcee Hastings, in case you don't know him, is that he was impeached as a federal judge in Florida and was, in fact, removed from the judgeship by the trial that was held in the Senate. And that's very rare that you've had that. You never have removed the president from power, although we've had two presidents impeached. But no president has been removed from power because it takes 2/3 vote in the Senate to bring about the removal. As you remember, back in 1868 when Andrew Johnson was impeached, really, I argue with people all the time that Johnson should not have been impeached for what I'm talking about Andrew Johnson, for what they brought charges up against him. He was impeached for having dismissed or tried to dismiss Edward Stanton from his cabinet position. And what the Congress was contending was that, in the Senate, of course, which confirms all appointments by the president as a check and balance system, they were contending at that time that not only should the Senate have the power to confirm an appointment, but because they do confirm the appointment, any dismissal of the appointment being confirmed by the Senate, therefore, must have the approval of the Senate to bring that result about as well. And that's nonsense, of course, because separation of power would be that you have these individual branches of government independent of each other, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and they're co-equal, and you can't reach into one to ferret out how the other one will behave unless they are behaving illegally and unconstitutionally. I think those two words, by the way, should be interchangeable. To act unconstitutionally is to act illegally. And this idea of what is illegal without it being constitutional is just your opinion. But I think that we have to understand this discourse that's going on right now out of the mouths of those persons that are supposed to be scholars of the Constitution. It's amazing to me that anybody would consider Obama to be a scholar of the Constitution just because he has a degree from Harvard University. You're not a scholar just because you graduate from Harvard University. And Harvard University today is not what it was back in the time when they were turning out one scholar after another. I mean, it's a different place now than it was back in the time period when it had this name up here at the very top of the academic, the echelon of power in academia. yeah, you had to think about what that meant. But this is a different time period right now, and it doesn't mean the same thing today as it meant back in the time period. It may still be at the top of the food chain, but the food chain itself, the hanging fruit, is a little bit lower now than it was then. And I see that even in the sense that Harvard is now fielding a good football team and a good basketball team. And how did that happen? we were seeing Harvard University with a good football team.
Yeah, it just seems like the whole priorities of American education and people in the, I've heard of people growing up around here, a lot of people didn't go to college, but they would root for a college, a particular college, U of M or Michigan State. And then that was the biggest thing for them. It was like, well, they got a great football team. I'm like, I was like puzzled because I always thought you went to a college or university to get an education, not to play sports. I didn't understand why that's what they based their like or dislike for an institution based on the football team. Yeah, this stuff was absurd.
They're paying, I was watching these figures, John. The coach down there at Alabama, I think his name is Saban, and he's making $7 million. Now they'll say, well, he's only coaching football and it's only a part of the year, it's not the whole year, and he's making all this money, and look what they're paying the professors in the classroom. Yeah, but Nick Saban, I think his name is Nick Saban. Saban is the one that brings the students to the school. Without Saban, you don't have any students.
Yeah, see, I can see that. I can see that. I guess it's a recruiting tool, but I mean, I just think it's an unnecessary thing. I think it's a problematic thing. And I don't know about this idea of team spirit. It's kind of ironic, too, because anybody who you come into an institution or any place, you have your own alliances, your own loyalties. But they want to take that away, and then they want to basically establish you're being a tie to a silly mascot, maybe an animal, because you can't name them after groups of individuals anymore. But and they want you to have this like forced allegiance and this kind of silly one. And basically, I mean, it really is. I mean, I never understood sports. And to me, just to get so riled up, like if the football team or the basketball team or the baseball team reflected people from your own area, I can understand having loyalty to it. But none of these people who are playing professional sports, certainly not in colleges, are from those areas they're from anyway. I mean, they're playing for. So I never understood this loyalty thing. I never understood that.
Well, John, you can look at that transition, and I say to my own, like I played baseball in college. I played baseball 2 years in my junior and senior year, and I played it because I had played it in Sandlock, and when I ran out of money and didn't have a way of paying my last 2 years of school, I took my Sandlock experience, took it on the baseball field, made the team. In the last 2 years, I had a scholarship in baseball. But during my junior year or my senior year, I was playing baseball, and I was a straight A student at the same time, because we had not at that point segregated sports from the classroom. Now, if you think that those persons playing football and they're eligible every week because they go into class and they are studying science and they are doing 3.0 work and better. There are some exceptions, but they are the exceptions. Most of those guys are taking classes in, let's see, how to make sure your jump shot is goes in the wastebasket when you're throwing it from your desk. And there are some classes in basket weaving. Hope you can get an A in that class. And how not to fall asleep in the classroom, and don't watch your watch to see what time it is, how much more time before you can get out of there and go back to the dorm. Make sure you don't miss lunch. And these are challenges. And it's very different now than it was then, because we had student athletes. And I remember when I was in high school, when the honor roll list would come out and they would post it in the hallway behind a glass enclosure, everyone would be around that glass enclosure trying to find out who made the honor roll. I mean, it was a big thing for you to be on that list, and you felt left out if your name was not on that list. If you didn't have I think they had a 3-point system then, and the 2.0 was the B, and the 3.0 was the A. Now I think it's a 4.0 now, but at that time it was like 3.0 in my high school. And if you're not on that honor roll, it's like you being dismissed. You weren't even important. Where's your name up there on that honor roll? And a whole lot of folks would be around there. And if your name was up there, like in the classroom, they'd be calling you Professor Moss and all that. That was a big deal to me and to the others as well. And I felt really respected, you know, being a poor kid, but that was one way I got some respect in the classroom because I excelled in the classroom. But today, we're at a different place right now. And when I hear Jonathan Turley talking about we are at a constitutional tipping point, and we've tipped the Constitution all the way over, and there have been books written about it, not just by Andrew P. Napolitano, Judge Napolitano. There is a book out written by Thomas Woods. It's called Who Killed the Constitution? And that's clear. There is no restraint upon the federal government in Washington, D.C. And that's as true of the Congress as it is of the President and the Supreme Court. Look at how the Supreme Court is operating in terms of striking down things and telling us that Obamacare is constitutional. There are 16 itemizations in Article 1, Section 8. There are 18 clauses in it, but there are 16 things which are assigned for Congress. It starts off by saying Congress have the power to, and then it lists 16 different things Congress can do. The 18th clause gives them the necessary and proper clause that says anything necessary and proper to carry out the things assigned to the national government under the Article 1, Section 8. Everything else not assigned to them accrues to the states and to the people therein under the Amendment 10, which made that clear. We know that to be true because the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution as a way of redefining the limits placed upon the government in Articles 1 through 7. And what they want to do is reinforce the restrictions in the Bill of Rights. And that's why you have Amendment 10 that closes off that, saying then everything that's not in fact given in the enumeration of powers or in the narration of what the powers are. The enumeration of powers is just a narration of the powers. And anything that's not given to the federal government expressly is therefore retained by the states and by the people therein. But do you think that's what we have right now? And it's outrageous, quite frankly, for a person that claims to be a constitutional scholar talking about we're at a constitutional tipping point. Because the Constitution in this country has been overthrown. We're in a post-constitutional America right now. And I'm not the first one saying that, but I will in fact endorse the idea because the idea can be proven. They're not following the Constitution. In fact, 3/4, that's my figure, John A. Williams, who is the professor at Georgetown and a syndicated columnist, writes on Town Hall, says that 2/3, I guess he's given an estimate, my estimate would be a little bit higher than his, 2/3 would be 6% of the things Congress is doing is not authorized in the Constitution and goes beyond the restrictions and restraints placed upon those who are in power in Washington. But he says 2/3 of all the things that Congress is doing are not constitutionally authorized. In fact, they are constitutionally prohibited. The framers didn't intend to have a government with 2.1 million persons in it. They wanted a small government, and we had pretty much a small government up until 1913 when they began to put the income tax in with the 16th Amendment, federal income tax. You couldn't grow government to the size that they wanted to do it because they didn't have the bank to be able to do that. And they kept trying to use a bank to do it, but that was not, I mean, Andrew Jackson put an end to that in his fight with Nicholas Biddle, and that's something everybody needs to go and read about in terms of that conflict that occurred there from 1816. Really, it was 1816 to 1836. And you need to go read about that conflict between Nicholas Biddle and Andrew Jackson, where Andrew Jackson stood up to, as they call them, the bankers, the banksters. Some people call them the banksters. and see what happened when the political power stood up against the banking power, and which one of them backed down. So that's why, okay, that gives me that's a whole different narrative there. But we need to go and study that. Well, today we have, in my view, and I have to say my view because nobody has endorsed this, but I'm hoping that some of the things I'm laying out there in front of the public will be picked up on, and we can begin to think about it in a different channel, because I'm trying to write in a different channel. I'm not trying to endorse the views already out there, because they've already been stated, and they've done the work they can do, and hopefully people are taking some notice of those who are the thinkers among us. They're not many. And those, certainly not in the administration, in the Obama administration. I mean, you can listen to Obama and then listen to Eric Holder. And what are you going to gain from that? And what do they know so that we can gain anything from these two men? These two men are basically clueless. And I have some things I want to deal with in that I brought, because I brought some things I want to talk about as far as statistics, to show you how ludicrous some of the things they're saying actually, you know, I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous what the things that they say. And you have to catch them at it in order to realize how ridiculous their claims are.
I never met anybody so arrogant, though, about what he doesn't know, is Obama. I mean, I haven't met him personally, but I mean, this guy is so boastful, and this look at his face is so smug. Like, and I'm so smarter than everybody else. You don't begin to comprehend how great I am. That's what comes across. I'm like, you're not that great.
John, what evidence do we have? Do you see any evidence this man is you know, he's a bright, shining light up there in the White House? What has he demonstrated that he knows about anything?
If he wasn't tall and decent-looking guy, you know, he wouldn't have gone anywhere in a career. I mean, serious. If you just base it up on qualifications, I mean, there's many people out there who graduate with more honors and distinction than him. They're, you know, from Harvard or Columbia or whatever you want to. He doesn't really have what it takes to actually, if he was to apply for a job in the real world, I doubt if he could get hired into a professional level. He was a community organizer, and from my understanding, he ran that organization that he had oversight in, financially ruined it. You know, he ran into the ground. He depleted the money sources and stuff.
There's a reason why he was never put in charge of anything until this country, which in its celebratory standing, because this country has been great, its political leadership hasn't been all that great, but the American people have always been above the pale, and that's true also of in the racial domain. And one day, what I'll do, and I'm going to do this real soon, is do a narrative on why, in terms of justifying slavery, it took racism to do it, and why that was born out of the slavery condition. It was not the creator of the condition, it was a byproduct of it. And it didn't have to be a byproduct anywhere else. And when we get into and it's because of the uniqueness of America, and I'm going to explain that in a future narrative of why that solely was born upon the soil of the United States, but it's because of the uniqueness of America. And we have not yet gone into that, but I'll go into that. That's another discussion that will take some time to delve into. I'm going to hold on to that one and do that in the future. I want to stay upon the narrative today in terms of what we are dealing with right now as far as these political parties and those persons who are running these two political parties. And it doesn't really matter which one we are talking about, except in degrees. They're both bad. The Democratic Party is a sedition party right now, and it is a treasonous party. It's also the party that is the carrier of the racial narrative, which the Democratic Party has always done that. And we'll look at that through the lens of history, but what we'll see if we look at it through the historical lens, we'll see that the civil rights movement was really aimed at stopping the Democrats from using the power of the state to stand on the rights of a part of the citizenry. And when they stood down from that, then the systemic aspects of the racial character or the political character of the nation changed once the Democratic Party was made to stand down from using the power of the state to enforce restrictions on the citizenship of a part of those who have the right, all the rights vested in their sovereignty by the Constitution of the United States. And you can go and look at that and look at the 1965 Voting Rights Bill, because when that bill is passed, because the Democrats were the ones that could take credit through Lyndon Johnson of having, he signed it into law, although more Republicans voted for it than Democrats, but he was the person that actually put the signature on it, and the one that's most visible, because none of you could know, you couldn't name the members of the House or the members of the Senate voted for it. Everybody knows that Johnson signed it into law. So Democrats, since he was the president at that time, get all the credit for it. So the Democrats can take a page from the history book and claim that they're the ones who did this work. Don't forget that the work was done against the other Democrats. And it looks like that they were the redeemers. They were the oppressors. And the redemption was for them to stop their own behavior. I know this is not in the history books. I'm telling you the facts. And one person reposted my narrative this morning on that the 6 page that I wrote on Facebook. And I go on those sites, see what the person that they're plugged into would say about it. And one of the persons said, used some curse words because they disagreed and put 2 words. I won't tell you what the words are. But one thing about liberals, they think that if they think that their anger and their profanity is an argument, and I don't pay them any attention because I don't endorse nor dignify ignorance. One of the persons here in the city, now that I'm on this point for 1 minute, one of the persons this past weekend, I guess they had a discussion at one of the colleges on what happened in Ferguson, what happened in New York, and I guess they had a debate on the racial lens in which both sides are looking at what occurred in those 2 sites. And one of the youngsters, one of the young upstarts, asked me if I would come to the next session, and because they had this professor that was in one of the departments, and carrying the usual baggage from the left, and would I come to the next meeting and give some balance from the other side. And I wrote and said that I normally say no to those requests because I refuse to debate with the left because there's too much irrationality, and that's what David Clark was telling Megyn Kelly. She tried to have a discussion with this person down here, a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. You're wasting your time talking to these people. But she was talking to this one guy, name is Al Green, not the singer. I wish he were the singer. At least he'd do it'd be some positive coming out of his mouth. But when she was trying to have a conversation with him about what had happened in Ferguson, and it went on and on and on, and then after that was over, she brought on David Clark. Now, David Clark, who is the Milwaukee County Sheriff, is the only person out there, the only person that they've been bringing on the networks on a regular basis that makes any sense. The only one, David Clark. Now, that would be a person that would be worth having a conversation with. But in terms of talking to people like Al Green and those other persons of the Congressional Black Caucus, I wouldn't waste my time talking to those people. Those people belong in a psycho ward. And I have to tell you this, and there are absolutely no exceptions, and that includes John Lewis. I know you just got through, Oprah just got through making another film that carries us back in the time, and now she's done a film on Selma. But have you noticed what they're doing here? They keep on going back into the past and bringing a narrative out of the past up to the present. You know why? Because there's nothing for them to complain about right now. And that's why they're using, by the way, two persons. One, a total gangster. Michael Brown was a thug. And you can claim anything you want to. That tape in that store is an indication of this guy being nothing other than a thug. And have to use these kinds of incidents to make them racial because of how little they have now to make a claim of the flaws of the society. What is flawed is a narrative. And I wrote about this on my post because I wanted people to understand what's really going on here. The subliminal seduction that they use in the media. For example, they talked about Eric Garner. They applied a chokehold on Eric Garner. I would dare anybody to define what a chokehold is based upon that being a chokehold they put on Eric Garner. Because if you're going to choke somebody, a chokehold, and you must make a distinction between a choking and a strangling. Now, have you ever heard anybody when they swallow something and they do this right here? You notice they're not grabbing around here where the arteries are. They grab this way because that's where the breathing canal is. And they're choking, right? That's choking. Now, this right here, that's closing off this passage here, the blood passage, that's strangling. So, did you notice that the media said that they put a chokehold on Eric Garner? They never said, and I went through all of the articles, they never said that Eric Garner was choked. Why did they do that? Because they did, and why did you fall for that? You fell for it because you're used to doing that from high school. They simply put things on both sides of the line that you're supposed to fill in, and you fill in the blanks. That's your high school class, where they provide so much information, and then you have to, through subliminal suggestion, you are supposed to fill in the rest of it. And so you fill in that he was choked to death. And that's why you had this one basketball player, he didn't know anything, wearing a shirt saying, "I can't breathe." Why can't you breathe? Eric Garner said he couldn't breathe. They think that because they used chokehold and he couldn't breathe, that means they choked him to death. He didn't choke to death. In fact, placing him underneath the officers trying to restrain him so they can handcuff him because they said he's under arrest. And as David Clark said, that sheriff in Milwaukee County said, once they say that you're under arrest, you're going to jail. And the only question is how much force must bring on the scene to bring that result about. Now, Obama would have you believe that this is about police overstepping their boundaries. Well, once they say you're under arrest and you are going to be non-compliant, it is the citizens overstepping their boundary. The resistance is overstepping the boundary. In other words, actions, and they're not going to say this, these persons have these scholars you see, they're not going to say that actions have consequences. And that's what that was about. But Eric Garner was never choked. And his breathing was not a result of him being strangled. The press never said that. They said the chokehold. They let you conclude that he was choked because they said an officer choked him and then put his death on a particular officer who was in fact restraining him, and they said that it is actionable in terms of libel, and they knew they couldn't cross that line. They suggested it and let you then put the information in there. Go back and read the articles. I was arguing that in our study group. And I'm getting, okay. So people just jump to conclusions, and they don't really read the fine print. That's what they depend upon. People not understanding how they're being led by the nose. I mean, you can lead people out there in the street and get them to burn the community down. They're not thinking, because they are being led. And then the people that lead them, these arsonists, can be having steak on the 5th floor, on 5th Avenue, on the 5th floor of the Rockefeller Center, or whatever on 5th Avenue, and they have to eat steak, and they didn't cause all this, and they're able to get their hands off of it because you don't see them out there in the street at that time. I mean, Sharpton makes a point not to be there when the riot breaks out. He throws the combustible flame out there in terms of his rhetoric and misconstrue the evidence, and then cause the combustible situation to be created. Then he falls back, and you can't find him until after the burning goes on, and he comes back to speak in front of the microphone as if he didn't do anything. But people can't figure that out because people are not able to. I mean, people are able to, but refuse to do any thinking on their own. That's why I don't debate the left, because I have nothing to say to the left. The immorality of the left can be seen by the fact that they're over on the left. The two parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, are neither of those things. One is a seditionist party, and we saw it through Dianne Feinstein. There was absolutely no reason for Dianne Feinstein to release those documents that would put our men, who are not in uniform necessarily, but some of them are in uniform, that are protecting the nation from abroad. And then why is that attack going on at the same time that within the nation we have from the same source an attack upon our police authorities? Did you hear what Barkley said? Barkley said that without the police, you would have Dodge City in the black community. That's where the breakdown of order is greatest, is in the black community. And to attack the police is saying the shield that keeps the lid on this awesome degree of violence. To remove the police is to do what? To increase the attack upon the community.
You know, it's kind of a catch-22, damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. I mean, if they don't give enough police protection in the black communities, there's complaints. If they police in black communities, there's complaints. And I don't like brutality. I've had problems with cops myself in Flint, and I mean, I'm pretty well documented actually. Mm-hmm. But you know, but then again, to do away with the police totally, I don't want to do that. But I have seen the police overstep their bounds. I've seen them get brutal. I've seen them do bad stuff to people. Personally, I've seen it. Yeah. But so to deny that, so there's people on the right though. I mean, they're extreme right, who want to deny that's even a remote possibility, because that's just absurd. Okay,
John, the point that needs to be made here, and I understand exactly how limiting you are in terms of making a claim that all officers. So your point is more reasonable, because you're making sure that you're not painting the canvas with too broad a brush. I understand that's what you're doing. But let's understand that the police department is not unlike any other professional group. There are bad eggs in all of them. There are people that are bad in the medical profession, in the legal profession, a lot of groups. There are people in our Congress, in our government, who are like that, most of them. So we're not going to find perfection, because human beings occupy all the roles that are played in any given society, and we haven't yet arrived at the level of angels. So there are going to be those moments. The question, though, is that when you meet those persons who are always going to be the exception, because there are going to be more good people in the profession than bad. If they were more bad than good, you close the profession down. So what do you do in those moments when you meet those characters that are stepping outside the role and the boundaries that are supposed to be constraining illicit behavior? You have to then use your intellect to get around that. And we all have had those incidents. The question is what they're transmitting to you, what are you transmitting back to them? And John, let me say this. How much time we have now?
Minute and a half. 2 minutes, yeah.
They had a situation this morning where they resolved the problem in Sydney. You heard about the one in Australia. When they came out of the place where they've been held as hostages, they all came out like this right here with their hands up. Now, you're raising your hands up there for a legitimate reason. This idea of hands up, don't shoot, shut up. They came out because they wanted to show the officers that they were not the ones that were creating danger, and they had their hands up. because that tells him what it is that you're doing. In these other situations where it's not clear what you're doing, somebody will get shot. It's nothing to do necessarily with the police officer being out of control. He wants to go home to his wife. And when you're doing something that's kind of like not in the regular way in which business is handled in a given situation, make sure that you know, you tell them what it is that you know. Because you know that you are not creating a danger. Make sure everybody that's there knows the same thing. Okay, I had a lot more to say, and I brought all these notes here, and I didn't get around to it. I will next week, I promise. Until next week, and until all times, as a matter of fact, I want you to continue to follow your dream. Because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.